Here is my story. I never believed she would cheat on me, not after everything I had done for her. My first attempt at mountain hiking was the first time I met my wife. For a very long time, I always wanted to go hiking, but because of my fears, I kept procrastinating. I finally summoned the courage to hike after one of my friends asked if I wanted to join a group of hikers that weekend, and I reluctantly agreed. When the weekend came, we drove to the meet-up location and eventually started hiking. It was fun at first until we started to ascend to the different levels of the mountain, and that was when I understood what I had gotten myself into. I was panting like someone who ran a marathon as we ascended, and I was sweating profusely. From how I panted and reduced my walking pace, the other hikers could tell it was my first time, but I didn't mind. It was embarrassing for a grown-up man like me to occasionally stop and squat while teenagers in our group kept chatting and moving ahead in high spirits. The last time I squatted and was trying to catch my breath, I felt someone's hands on my back, and as I looked up, her soft voice asked, "Are you okay?" I wasn't, and no matter how I tried to hide it, it was apparent. My friend, on the other hand, who was also hiking for the first time, was sitting on a tree log because he couldn't continue. He was already asking us to return to my car and go home, but I kept going because I wanted to prove a point to myself. But when my ex-wife came to me, my legs were already shaking, and I could no longer hold in my discomfort. Eventually, I agreed to return to the car with my friend, but my ex-wife insisted she would escort me back to the car and catch up with the group later so I wouldn't stumble and fall. When she mentioned stumbling and falling as we descended, I thought it was ridiculous, but she was right. I didn't take up to 10 steps from her when I missed a step and sprained my ankle. It was so bad that I couldn't press my right leg on the ground, but I returned to my car. I won't say it was a coincidence for my ex-wife and me to meet on that day because we became best friends after the mountain hike. That day, she went with us to the nearest clinic, and after my ankle was attended to, my friend insisted that we give her a ride home, but we couldn't tell which house she was going to because we dropped her on the street. When I got home that day, I couldn't stop thinking of her kindness toward me, so I decided to search for her on Facebook. Unfortunately, I didn't get her last name. There were thousands of people from our location who had her first name, and I was in no mood to go through their profiles one after the other. 2 weeks passed, and I didn't see her again. I talked to my friend about going to search for her, but he said it wasn't proper, and besides, we didn't know the exact house she went into, so I let it slide. Although I still drove through that street every day, hoping to see her returning from work one day or something, but I didn't. I gave up searching for her and concluded she was an angel sent to me that day, but I didn't know she would come to the organization I worked at the following week. I also didn't know she had a reputation in my town and was contesting for a position in our local politics. I was shocked when she came to our organization, and everyone liked her and received her warmly. This time, she dressed more formally and looked very different from the tight Skechers I saw her in. When she came in, she recognized me and instantly asked about my ankle, and after talking for a while, I asked her if we could go on a thank you date, and she happily agreed. I wanted to thank her, but more than that, I wanted to get to know her better. The day of our first date came, and we met at a local restaurant. She didn't want us to go to one of those famous places, so we could have some alone time, and I understood why. I know it sounds unbelievable, but I fell in love with her and everything about her. I loved her smiles, voice, how she cared for people she didn't know, and most importantly, her big heart. To cut the long story short, we began to see each other more and more until we couldn't stop seeing each other. As days passed, we got closer, and when I couldn't keep it in anymore, I asked her out, and she said yes. Though I was afraid because of the difference in our social status, she said yes. The thing about my ex-wife was she was always happy, and she loved making the people around her happy. It was more reason I pushed her to win the position she was contesting for. I sacrificed my time, all of my life savings, and everything I could for her to win, because I knew her win was also a win for me, and she did. We dated for 8 months, and throughout our dating, everything went smoothly. We didn't have any fights or arguments. Everything was perfect. Our relationship was almost like the perfect, flawless Hollywood rom-com, and I was convinced she was my soulmate. We got married, and we had a big, beautiful wedding. Both our family and all of our friends were in attendance. It was the kind of wedding I always looked forward to, and although we spent a lot of money on it, I was satisfied. After our wedding, we rented a bigger apartment because we were already expecting a baby, a boy, to be precise. Before our wedding, we discovered she was already 1 month pregnant, and we wanted our son to have enough room to play in. After our son came, we ensured we raised him with love and care and sent him to an excellent private school. One of the parents we were friends with recommended the school. It was perfect for our son. Even as our son grew older, our marriage was still beautiful. We still spent time with each other, ate together as a family, and did fun things with our son. We were always there for each other and supported each other a lot. For someone who had multiple bad relationships in the past, I was finally happy that I found a woman who wouldn't cheat on me and destroy everything we worked for, but I was wrong again. One day, I was at home, and my ex-wife had gone to a meeting, and my son had gone to school. I wanted to finally clean our home office since my ex-wife and I were working from home, and she had been bugging me to move some things, but I kept procrastinating. So while cleaning up, I stumbled on my wife's USB drive that was sealed in a small white envelope and tucked inside one of the drawers where only her hand could reach. It felt strange because she had never kept her USB drive that far from her, and it felt like she was hiding it. Out of curiosity, I took the USB drive from the envelope, which had already been opened multiple times, and inserted it into my laptop to see what was in it. To my greatest surprise, I saw explicit images and videos of my ex-wife and my son's school teacher. I didn't know what to say or do, so I sat there staring at the screen. I watched the videos from beginning to end and didn't know when I started crying. It was a very heartbreaking thing to see and to think that the dates those pictures were taken went back 8 months before I found out, and my son recently entered a new class, the man's class, so it meant they had it going before our son was promoted to his class. I thought about confronting her, but I knew it would be pointless. Instead, I copied the files into my computer and sent them immediately to the school board. I knew that my ex-wife kept a list of emails, especially emails of important people in our town, so I sent the same files to our family friends whose children were also in the same school and to other people who held her in high regard. The sweetest part was, right from her meeting, some of the people she was with had gotten the email, and they were so disappointed. It was even worse that it came from her email address, and she immediately knew I was behind it. When she came home, she was livid and kept hitting me and yelling at me for ruining her reputation. I told her I only did what I felt was right, which made her madder. The next day, the news of her affair with the school teacher spread everywhere like wildfire, and her reputation was gone. The school fired our son's teacher, and his angry wife ended up divorcing him. Speaking of divorce, while she was sulking and whining about her ruined reputation, I contacted a lawyer to help in processing our divorce papers, and before it was ready, I packed out of her house and took my son with me. She tried to speak to the local press, but it was already too late. Everyone saw all of the videos and pictures, and there was no way she could talk herself out of it. The scandal caused her to lose many friends, but the ultimate part was when she was voted out of her position because she wasn't the kind of model our town needed. We've never spoken to each other again, and I hope we never do. The most saddening part was she never apologized or showed any remorse for cheating on me or hurting my feelings. She was more concerned about her reputation and what the townspeople thought about her. That hurt me a lot, and it opened my eyes to many things, and though I loved her at one time, I can't help but think that she was using me. She has been miserable since then, and each time I bump into her, it gladdens my heart that I did what I did. OP, it's sad to find out that your wife used you all this while and did not love you as much as you loved her. The great thing is you acted like a man and did not cover up for her sins. She cheated on you, and that's unforgivable, and I can't help but think of how many men she had been with while you were dating. She didn't show remorse because it was never really about you or the people. She was only doing eye service to be perceived as the right candidate for whatever position she contested. I'm glad you divorced her, and I know you will be a good father. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Now let's move on to the second story of the day. My wife and I had been dating for several years before I popped the question, and she agreed to marry me. That moment was one of the most beautiful moments we shared. As you'd imagine, our wedding was big and the talk of the town. Our friends, enemies, family, and even strangers were there. My father even gifted us a house. He was into real estate, so it was nothing to him. With our marriage, my ex-wife's fame grew, and she even moved from speaking only on the radio to being hosted on television too. Even when we moved into our new house, I bought a lot of art pieces from a particularly fast-growing artist, and my ex-wife was crazy about his works just to make her happy. In fact, from the day we met at the party, everything I did after that day was to make my ex-wife happy. I didn't argue with her when she said she didn't want kids yet. For the first year of our marriage, we were happy. We enjoyed each other's company a lot, and we were best friends. Even if we argued about something, we had a rule of never going to bed without settling it, which helped us a lot in bonding. She was the relationship coach and knew how to make our marriage work. Everything was going on fine between us until one day. We all had our separate laptops, but there was a home computer anyone could use in case we forgot our laptops at the office or anything. Also, I can't recall when my wife used the home computer last because she was always with her laptop. That day, I received a call from a client who had sent me an email that needed a quick response. Unfortunately, I left my laptop at my father's house that afternoon, so the only option was to use the home computer since it was closest to me. As soon as I opened the email, I realized that my wife forgot to log out of her Gmail account the last time she used the home computer. Maybe she didn't think I would use it because I rarely did. I was someone who liked being organized. I also noticed a particular email that kept messaging her, and I figured it was the fast-growing artist I bought most of our artwork from. It didn't feel right because he sent more than 5 messages daily, and I was curious about what there were. At first, I believed he was trying to sell her new art pieces or sending reminders, but when I opened the emails, I was shocked by my bone marrow. Maybe if I was older, I would have had a heart attack that day. Just kidding. I was shocked and disappointed to see that my wife and the artist she raved about were having an affair, and it started 3 months after we got married. My disappointment was worse than the news of my first wife's death. Instead of responding to the email I was supposed to, I sat there and went through all of their conversations. It was heartbreaking to read, but I also remembered getting an invitation from the artist to attend his gallery opening. I knew it would be a perfect time to disgrace them, so I acted like nothing was wrong and forwarded all of their conversation to my email address. His opening was only 3 days away, giving me enough time to do what I wanted. Before the opening day, I reached out to him and asked if I could give a speech at his opening, and he was elated. I knew he would agree because I bought art pieces from him that ran into millions of dollars. When D-Day came, I arrived at the location with my wife, and I still acted like everything was fantastic between us. She didn't suspect anything because she was used to my mood swings and must have thought I was not in a good mood those past days. And because he was a famous artist, almost half of the town was at the location. We exchanged pleasantries as expected, and when it was time for me to give the speech, I asked if I could display a collage of all the beautiful art pieces I had bought from him, and he nodded excitedly. To everyone's surprise, I projected a collage of all the conversations between my ex-wife and the artist. When she saw it, her glass fell out of her hands, and everyone's eyes turned to her and her lover. She was very embarrassed, and she ran out of the hall. I also left, and a lot of people followed me. Before we left the house, I ordered some people to move her things from the house to her parents' house. I'm sure her parents must have called her to find out why because she never showed up at my house again. She was too embarrassed to even beg. In the days that followed, my ex-wife got the worst online and newspaper lashing of her life. She made the local newspaper headlines, and everyone in town talked about her. It was funny because she advised people whose spouses cheated on them to never take back their cheating spouse. In her radio sessions, she talked down on cheaters and cheating itself. There's no asking if her career ended because it did. She got fired, and she lost the respect she once had. On the other hand, her lover's reputation was ruined. He lost a lot of followers and didn't make any sales at his gallery opening. Also, the same day I found out about their affair, I started processing my divorce papers, and we divorced shortly after. After our divorce, she moved out of town because she could not bear the shame anymore. It's been 2 years, and I haven't seen her since. It still hurts me because I loved her so much, but like she said, cheating spouses don't deserve a second chance. Her words, not mine. OP, it's pretty unfortunate that your wife was stupid and selfish enough to not even follow her own advice. If your ex-wife always said, cheating spouses don't deserve a second chance, then you have no reason to do otherwise. I know you loved her, but these things happen, and sadly, it happened to you. I will also say you did a great job. I know I might sound less human, but she deserved to have her reputation ruined and her job taken from her. That way, she'll learn her lesson. And maybe if she decides to cheat on another faithful man, she'll think about everything that could go wrong. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.